Welcome to what is a drizzly and wet Sabi Sands this morning, and the rain's just started coming down now, so hence the timing. You get to see me don this wonderful poncho. It's going to protect me from the elements. Some of you may think I'm trying to make a fashion statement, but I'm not. I don't have the taste to buy such wonderful garments. Now, apologies, we are on the rust bucket, which is not really fitted out, so we don't have the proper light. So I'm just going to wedge my flashlight in there. That seems to work. Now you can see me. My name is Scott, everyone, and I'm teamed up with Tebs on camera. You've joined a live safari, so that's why it appears like we are hugely disorganized, I guess, but that is the joy about being involved in these live safaris. You get to see everything along the way. Oh, the poncho, I've closed the poncho on the door, so it's moving. There we go. Not my most glamorous start to safari, but now we can go. It's about 20 degrees Celsius in the 70s Fahrenheit, and like I said, it's just started drizzling quite heavily as I jumped out to put the poncho and it stopped. But at least now we're ready for another little deluge. I'm not expecting any massive downpours, but it's better to be ready for the rain. Now, sadly, a lot of you were eagerly anticipating meeting Neil, who was going to be doing an interview drive this morning, and you wouldn't believe it, as he reversed out of the parking garages, the clutch cable broke on his vehicle. So rather than rushing him onto this vehicle in a panic to send him out alone, they're going to try and get that vehicle up and running, and we're just going to wait a few minutes and see what Brent manages to help sort out with Neil. And what may end up happening is we may swap vehicles. He may jump in here and take you on a bit of a drive, and I may then take a bushwalk. So that is the one possibility, but we're going to leave the other guys to troubleshoot. But while it's dark, nobody's going to be walking around in this wilderness area, as it's a death sentence to walk around in the dark. You wouldn't want to go on a nocturnal walking safari, so definitely safer in the vehicle in the darker hours. I'm hoping that we may find some sign of the Nkahuma pride of lion, which is a pride of lion that were not too far west from our northwestern boundary. They were busy finishing off a buffalo kill yesterday afternoon, and there is a chance they're going to have moved further east back onto Djuma. So I'm going to go and check that northwestern corner now. Hopefully we'll have some luck, and wouldn't it be nice if we find these lion for Neil and then send them in with the vehicle. Now, for those of you who don't know Neil, he works in the area. He's been in the industry for many years, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot of interesting things to tell you. And always nice for you guys to get to meet someone new and hear some different stories and have a different take on safari, which is what every safari guide, I guess, will bring to the table. A slightly different energy and interest and passion. If any of you are watching for the first time, you can send through questions using the hashtag SafariLIVE on Twitter, and or sending an email through to questions@wildearth.tv. So that's the way you communicate with us, and we do love to hear from you. When you are chatting with us, please let us know where you're from. Also, if you can somehow let us know your gender, that also can be quite useful. Sometimes I've answered many questions from some of you, and I don't even know whether you're a male or a female. So let us know that information. It's always nice to get to know you guys, and that way we can just build on the safari experience and essentially tailor-make it for your specific needs. Hello to Liz in Wisconsin, and It's not always this dark. I mean, it's this overcast morning that's causing it to be slightly darker than normal. But every single morning that we go forward, we're going closer to our winter, and therefore the sun is rising that much later. So as of the 1st of February, we are only going to be heading out at 5:30. So half an hour later, we're currently heading out at 0500 Central African time. So I think the 1st of February is in about a week or so. I'm not too sure what the date is, but whenever that day comes along, you guys can expect to see us starting half an hour later in the morning. The sunset safari will not change times for now, but we'll keep you updated as to when to expect the changes for the sunset safari. Now, it's quite fun actually coming out in the morning with the spotlights, even though it's not regular safari kind of protocol. You usually don't drive around in the dark in the morning, but I've quite enjoyed doing it. It's a bit more of a sense of adventure. I always like being out for the sunrise. That's kind of what you aim for on safari usually. Good. Come on, animals. Morning, X-Ranger. Sorry, I was just repositioning the radio antenna so that I can help hear a little bit more clearly as we get further and further away from the final control room where Kirsty's directing the show, with Nikki lending her a hand. And yes, X-Ranger, we are lucky that the Rust Bucket, which is the vehicle that I'm in today, decided to start. Otherwise, we would have been certainly delayed. We would have been able to make a plan. We would have been able to get that bushwalk backpack up and going. But then our problem would have been the fact that it is as dark as it is now, and I would not want to be walking around right now. As I said earlier, well done, Tim in Arkansas. You've asked where the red jack is on Rusty, and it's right here, but it's just been camouflaged by Brent's wonderful spray painting. Well, not that wonderful, as you can see, because once you take a closer look, you can see that it is still red. So Brent did some fairly sloppy paintwork there, I think, but it concealed it enough to fool you, Tim, and at a glance, it is less intrusive than it was before and blends in a little bit better with the bull bar of the vehicle. Now, it's just going to be a moment where I'm probably not going to have... Oh, actually, let me just try and put this antenna up. I haven't been in this vehicle for quite some time, so I don't know its intricacies. And interestingly, all the vehicles are slightly different. This one doesn't appear to be working too well at the moment, so I've been lucky to not have to deal with it. I'm just going to see if putting this antenna up doesn't help my comms with the final control, because if not, we're going to have to turn around and head towards the area where I will not be able to check for lines. So let's see if that helps, and that way we'll be able to continue with our plan. We'll take off this ridiculous poncho now, because it inhibits one's movements greatly. There we go. Well, at least the rain stopped. That's a blessing in disguise. Well, not a blessing in disguise. It's a blessing for us, not a blessing for the environment, because we are in a drought. It is exceptionally dry at the moment. And let's hope now that this antenna is up, I can hear what's going on. Yeah, that's working much better. Very good. Susie in South Bend, Indiana. Thank you very much for informing us that the 1st of February is on the coming Monday. Now the next thing you can do, Susie, is help me with what day of the week it is today, and then I'll know exactly when to expect the time change. It's Thursday today, so a couple more days. Thanks, Susie. And you're right, shame, poor old Neil. He was obviously so excited to head out, which he still will be. Maybe he's breathing a sigh of relief. It's incredibly nerve-wracking. And as some of you may have seen yesterday with my friend Brett, he started off like a deer in the headlights, but as the drive proceeded, I thought he became incredibly comfortable and ended up doing a great job. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. So I urge you all to just be your usual friendly selves, and it really does help just ease the guys into this fairly daunting task at the outset. After a while, then it just becomes great fun, as you all know. To Chesh Hill, and you're interested to know which animal is most feared when walking in the dark, and it's one that will vary depending on which guide you're asking. And even during the daytime, you'll ask various guides which animal are you most worried about encountering on foot, and some people will say elephant, some will say buffalo, others will say lion, some will say hippo. For me, it's the predators in general that I'd be more cautious of at night. During the day, your chances of a predator seeing you as a food source or taking a chance is very, very slim. Whereas at night, that will change greatly because they feel more comfortable with the cover of darkness. There's no two ways about that. So your chances are increased greatly at night with predators, and probably remain the same with all of the herbivores. And those are my major concerns walking around here during the daytime. It's not bumping into the lions and the leopards that concerns me. It's the hippo and the elephants and the buffalo that are my main concerns. In this reserve, we only really see white rhinoceros, which are fairly relaxed animals. They can be deadly. They can charge. They are massive, and they've got a very sharp nose with a horn sticking out the end of it. Well, that is the sharp nose, I guess. But not nearly as cantankerous and short-tempered as black rhinoceros, which we do not see regularly here in the Sabi Sands. So, because of the fact that we are in a predominantly white rhino area, that means, excuse me, the rhino don't seem to cause too much trouble for us when walking. Excuse me, got the sneezes there. Maybe, hopefully, there's a cat nearby. I've developed over the years an allergy to cats, and it's quite frustrating because I love cats, but I just simply can't cuddle them and snuggle with them, which in this area is not a problem because we don't snuggle and cuddle with the cats of the Sabi Sands. The herd of impala up ahead, so I'm just going to dim the lights so that we don't put our very, very bright lights into their eyes, thus blinding them. Hello to Jay in Las Vegas, and you would like to know if there are any bats that fly around here at night. And yes, there certainly are. It's mainly insect-eating bats, Jay, that we see. And obviously it's very, very difficult to film them without you guys getting seasick. Sorry, I'm just trying to turn off Tebs' head now. My little torch there. But so mainly insect-eating bats, and I'm not too sure on the exact species for you, sadly. So I can't help you there. But I do know that nearby in the rest camp in the Kruger National Park called Skakuza, you get to see a whole bunch of fruit bats hanging under one of the thatch roofs where you eat at one of the kind of cafes there, and that's called an epauletted fruit bat. Good. Let's take a moment just to stop and listen and watch this bachelor herd of impala. And not easy business for Tebs to control the camera. He's got a black refuse bag wrapped around it as a rain cover. It's actually worth probably taking a look at. So what I've done is I've turned my phone around onto selfie mode, and as Teb zooms in, you'll see him hidden behind his weapon of mass destruction, his camera, and there's the little black refuse bag. There I am, as you can see. So that's also what the noise may be on the microphone that you may hear. But he's doing his best, and obviously it's important that we keep the equipment as dry as possible so that we can continue taking you guys on safari on a daily basis. Certainly no tracks of these lions coming back, at least not that I've seen. There is a chance that I may have missed them. Morning, Mike in Florida. Are you interested to know how much rain will be required in order to get the riverbeds, or sometimes what we call drainage lines here, which can be a little bit confusing, to be flowing again? And Mike, sadly, due to the effects of the humans outside of this reserve, there's not nearly as much water flowing through as there used to be. And that's basically the world over. As soon as people start building dams for catchments to kind of feed a city, so you've got a big reservoir of water, that's preventing water flowing down to where it originally would have. And like I said, the world over, there have been massive dams built, farmers sucking up water out of rivers in order to water their maize or their cabbages or their potatoes or whatever it is that they're farming. And of course, this is a requirement for the huge demands and consumption of a rapidly expanding population on our planet. And this obviously has knock-on effects, and a lot of the time you don't kind of realize that as we eat on our tasty green apples. But that is the reality surrounding us. Even though we've got a beautiful chunk of wilderness and a massive chunk of wilderness, the majority of South Africa is not that. And there are cities and farms, and water is obstructed getting to where it ordinarily would have. So the riverbeds will never flow as they once did. And the only time that they will flow is after rains for possibly a day or two, maybe three, depending on the individual riverbed and where the rain fell, and then it'll subside. So look, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it's all doom and gloom, and you may find that these riverbeds, even hundreds of years ago, before human inhabitation, were acting as kind of nature's gutters. So just like we've got gutters on our roofs to help channel water off in a certain direction, some of the riverbeds that are predominantly dry in this area would have mainly been dry, for a lot of the year. But I can assure you that they would have flowed for far longer periods of time than they do today. And that is because of the knock-on effects of areas outside of the reserve impacting them. The Sabi River and the Sand River both are the two rivers that both flow through the Sabi Sands, both flow through human inhabitation before they reach us. So those are the things you need to remember. And I guess you could Google Earth an image of a map of the Sabi Sands and therefore be able to look at what surrounds us, and there is a lot of human inhabitation around us, right up to the fence of the Sabi Sands. In the southern Sabi Sands where I've worked before, you've got maize crops growing literally up to the fence of the Sabi Sands. Imagine the torture that must be for the elephants, just looking through at these tasty treats. Also, the cows walking along the fence line must be torture for the lions. But those are the realities of this area and of a lot of parts of Africa. Nancy in Texas, and you'd like to know, where is the quarantine young male leopard? Well, he's not that young anymore. That I just said young male leopard because of default, but he's, I think, just over 3 years of age now, so I should probably stop referring to him as young, because he's turning into a big boy now. And Nancy, sadly, I don't have the faintest idea where he is. I'm not too sure when last he's seen. But in general, he's heading or sticking around to the south and east of Djuma, on Torchwood and Cheetah Plains and the coral properties that are outside our area of traverse. So sadly, we cannot go into those areas to hunt him down for you. But he does come back and visit occasionally. We were very lucky to have him kind of mid-December. He killed an adult female kudu on our southeastern corner of the property on Leadwood Road. So who knows, maybe he'll come back for a visit, but it's not uncommon for young male leopards, once they've moved out of their natal area, to kind of keep away and actually head further and further afield. And that's exactly what Mother Nature wants to happen, because then there's decreased chance of those leopards mating with their mother and or their sisters from previous litters. They're kind of not step sisters, but possibly half sisters, and that'll obviously create better genetic variance. So what will usually happen is that the young males will drift off quite far away, whereas female leopards will quite often squeeze in to territory, if possible, next to their mother. And that's exactly what's happened here. This is the area of the female leopard called Karula, and her daughter Shadow is literally bordering her territory to the west on Arethusa. And they will compete with one another, which is really interesting. Mother and daughter will often vie for territory. This is the buffer zone of that specific territory. Karula usually hangs out to the left of this road and quite far further east as a general rule, and Shadow sticks around up to this buffer and then further west all the way to the western boundary of Arethusa. There's some zebra ahead of us, that's why I just gave off the zebra yodel to greet them. Looking a little bit worked up, which is exciting me. There may be a good reason why they're worked up. Maybe there's some predators nearby. Good morning to Justin in New York, and very happy to hear that you've been loving these live safaris since you first joined us during Big Cat Week at the end of November, beginning of December last year. Yeah, the zebra, like I said, they are feeling a little bit worked up. Justin, you ask a good question, and you are interested to know if you are in the unfortunate situation of being caught out in the African wilderness after dark without a flashlight, without fire. Where's the safest place to be? And you have hit the nail on the head. You've chosen the perfect spot here. The zebra popping out again, up in a big tree. That's what I would do. And that's exactly what Harry Wallater, one of the old wardens of the Sabi Sands, grandfather of quite a well-known wildlife filmmaker today called Kim Wallater. Now, Harry Wallater was a tough man, and it was in, I think, the early kind of 1900s that Harry was one of the wardens in the Kruger National Park. And back then, they used to do all of their patrols on horseback. I mean, can you imagine? This place was wild, deep, dark, remote Africa, and these guys were covering huge distances, patrolling on horseback, doing their bit being a warden. And I'm not sure which part of the Sabi Sands he was in when he was being a warden. Anyway, he was attacked by a lion while on horseback, and the horse managed to escape, but he didn't. So the lion obviously took him off the back of the horse. The horse ran home. Now, this was a huge blessing in disguise, and had the horse also been caught by the lion, this would have been a problem, because as soon as Harry Wallater's colleagues and work staff realized that the horse had returned home without the rider, there was a big problem. Now, they had huge distances to cover and try and backtrack this horse until they eventually found Harry Wallater the following day, tied up with a belt, his belt, in a tree, and he had lost a lot of blood by then. The lion had gored him, but you wouldn't believe it. He had managed to kill the lion with a knife, a penknife with a 6-inch blade. And I've seen that knife. The blade is about this long and not very big. It's in a museum in the Kruger National Park, along with the skin of that lion. And you can see the puncture wounds where he repeatedly stabbed this big male lion until it eventually let up, and that way he then could crawl himself, kind of pull himself up a tree, one last ditch of trying to save his life, and then he knew he was going to pass out, so he undid his belt, bolted himself up into the tree so that he couldn't fall out, and that's where they found him, passed out, unconscious, but they managed to revive him, and he survived to tell the tale. So that's what he did overnight. He climbed up into a tree, and even with wounds, even with blood in the air, may well have found that a few hyena came sniffing up to the base of the tree, but were incapable of climbing it. The chance of being plucked out of a tree by a leopard at night is very slim, but possible. That's your only kind of major risk by going up a tree, but it's, for me, definitely the safest place that you could be, if you don't have a fire or if you don't have light. If you've got a very bright light, that will help you greatly at night. So that's also important to remember. I don't want it to strike massive fear into you in case some of you are stuck in that unfortunate situation. It is a reality. You could be out on a night drive in a remote concession in Africa, in areas where I've worked, where I know the radios aren't as good as they should be, and out of the vehicles, and you're traversing massive expanses, and your vehicle could break and your radio could break, and you could be left with the flashlight, and your guide may say, come, we are going to walk home, and with the bright flashlight in a fairly open area, you know, it's something that I would do in very specific circumstances. So there's always an exception to the rule, is what I'm trying to say, and you do have to, I guess, be prepared for just about anything out here. These are the boys that I don't want to encounter. You guys and your short tempers are a problem. Not only have they got short tempers and can they move incredibly quickly, and they've got those powerful forequarters and massive horns that can create massive or inflict massive damage very quickly, they are also incredibly tough to stop. And even if you are carrying a massive caliber rifle while you are on a walking safari, unless your bullet is perfectly placed into the brain, they will keep coming without even breaking stride. And these rifles, like I say, have got massive calibers. They've got huge stopping power. But these animals, along with others, like the elephants, are very tricky to bring down. And you hear horror stories of guides in various areas firing 5 or 6 or 7 rounds into an animal. And even then, it doesn't stop them. But thankfully, that doesn't happen very often. And I've been very fortunate in that I've never been in a situation where I have had to shoot an animal, and all guides will try their very best to avoid that at all costs. But even the best guide in the world could get unlucky and may have to perform that at some stage. Let's take a look at this guy that's just crossed the road. He's got an interesting left eyeball, and that does not look like fun. Shame. I recognize him, and I wonder what caused that. Possibly a branch that popped into his eye. Who knows, but he's clearly not comfortable with that. But he's been around for quite some time since that's happened, or at least since we've been noticing. Good. Well, we're going to leave you boys to chew the cud. Wow. Now, a lot of you are going to be very happy with the plan that is being made regarding Neil. He's going to be doing his interview drive in the next short while, so just be patient. And the reason why things are getting exciting is that Stefan is going to be taking a bushwalk. And it's been quite a while since I think he's led one. And as many of you may know, he's incredible to go on a bushwalk with. His knowledge is really in depth, as is his passion for being on foot. But quite often he's behind the scenes and not in front of the camera, but you're in luck today. So Stef's going to be taking the bushwalk, and then I'm going to swap out with Neil, who's going to take over commanding the steering of the rust buckets, which is this vehicle that we're in now. Very, very happy that that drizzle stopped. It really started coming down quite hard just before we went live. That's why you caught me mid-poncho. So I'm happy that that's not going to further complicate Neil's morning. The poor guy, he must have thought, well, this isn't a good start. I can't even get the car to go forward, but obviously that had absolutely nothing to do with him. Just uncanny timing that the clutch cable snapped as it was his turn to get moving. I think at least he's got, I guess, the bad luck out the way. Hello, Kathy in Tennessee, and you're interested to know the kind of protocols that will be used when trying to reintroduce an animal into a wilderness area. And will they be kept in a quarantine area? Will they be taken back to their natal area? It's a very, very complicated question that you ask that will vary for a number of reasons. And I'll list these reasons just so that everyone understands why it would be impossible for me to answer your question accurately without knowing more information. What kind of animal is it? Was that animal born in the wild, or was it born in captivity that is being reintroduced into the wild? Was it fully grown when it was taken out of the wild before being in quarantine, therefore knowing how to survive in the wild before being taken, or was it young and not aware of the complications of living in the wild before being reintroduced into the wild? So those are the main issues that I would need to know more about before being able to attempt to try and answer the question in more depth. But even then, I'm no game capture expert and or quarantine rehabilitation and reintroduction specialist. So, and even then, you will find specialists that will have varying degrees. I think that's an avenue and an area that is not a pure science, and there's going to be various very different views on what is the right thing to do with regards to that. I think that should kind of I hope that makes sense, Kathleen. I wish I could give you more, but like I say, there's simply far too many variables for me to be able to accurately give you an educated answer. I've got an idea though of what you think. I've got an idea of what you're thinking of, though, Kathy, and sadly we've got no news on that matter. And like I said, trust me, we don't want to hide anything from you. And as soon as we hear anything about a possible animal that may be coming back, we will be sure to let you know. We are all in the same boat here. To Whitney, and you would like to know, is it more dangerous to be on a horseback safari as opposed to be on a walking safari? And my first kind of spur of the moment answer will be it's more dangerous on foot. But then once we unpack things a little bit more, again, it'll depend on a few scenarios. Are you a good horse rider or not? If you do not know how to ride a horse, you will be safer on your own 2 feet. But if you are a horse rider, it will be, I think, definitely safer on a horse. Again, provided that horse is relatively well trained and used to being in a wild area, being exposed to wild animals. And I have worked in areas where they do offer horseback safaris, where the horses, you train them to know what a lion is, and you walk the horses up to lion, just as you would approach lion on foot on a walking safari. Now, because you're on a big animal, and you're elevated and you're still a human, and lions can still see that you're a human, and you still have human intellect to kind of outcompete or outmove the lion's thought process, you will be in a safe position being on a horse. I think safer position being on a horse than being on foot, because you're bigger, and therefore that much more of a reason why the lion should not approach you or not want to jump on you. So you're essentially standing up on a pedestal, which is the horse. Again, though, if that horse doesn't listen to your commands, which in turn will put you in a situation where the lion is you are no longer mentally out-competing the lion, you run away from the lion. What do cats do? They chase things. A little ball of fur, a human riding a horse's back. The chase mechanism is triggered only when something runs away. And often, and quite interestingly enough, even in the wild, if a leopard runs up to a warthog and the warthog doesn't know that it's there and it stands its ground continuing to eat, facing the opposite direction, the leopard will probably jam on brakes and not latch onto that warthog. And there are actually clips of that happening with young leopard that stalk up to a young leopard stalking up to a warthog. It takes 3 steps and pounces, lands right behind the warthog, who continues to eat. And the leopard just kind of sits there not knowing what to do. The warthog turns around, sees it, and then runs off. And then the leopard's kind of, So that gives you an idea of how things vary on the situations. But I think it's definitely safer to be on a horse if you know how to ride it and if the horses are fairly well trained. So something definitely worth looking into if you do like riding horses, because it's great fun, and you get to gallop alongside wildebeest and the giraffe, and you can approach animals like elephant quite close. Something that I would love to do, and I am going to have to do fairly soon. Nikki, my girlfriend, who's sitting in the final control, is a horse riding fanatic, and obviously she loves the bush as well. So to combine the two is something that I need to make happen soon. And I think the place where I'm going to do that is Kenya. I've got some great friends up there with horse riding outfits that I'm really looking forward to making the most of. Now, while I've been yabbering away, the sun has just broken through the clouds, and look at this beautiful scene. And I've just heard Nikki shouting for joy in final control. So now you are all witnesses to the fact that I have to take her on this horseback safari. There's no way I can get out of it now. Far too many people are involved. Isn't this a magical scene? And very happy that there's a small little gap in the horizon, because it's basically 8/8 cloud cover, maybe 7/8. But I think that we may get lucky, and these clouds may burn off. As Teb zooms out, you'll see there's a few kind of light patches within this predominantly cloudy sky. And I think there's blue skies beyond that. So, well, there definitely is. We all know that. It's just how far beyond the clouds. But I think there's a chance that things are going to clear up. So, looks like we're going to have a beautiful day here in the Sabi Sands of South Africa. So the leopards have been evading us the last few days.
Good morning, mobile station.
And that's something that we need to try and rectify. But I've just got a message through saying that I need to rush across to the DRC, which is the Djuma research camp, which is where the majority of the SafariLIVE crew stay. And basically what is going to have to happen is, once we get into that area, we're going to have to just stop the safari for maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the most, in all likelihood. And the reason why is that the vehicle on this camera, which is known as the P shooter, is the bushwalk camera. So we're going to need to take this camera off, put the other camera on here, and as well as the other presenter Neil, get him all comfortable with the vehicle, and he's going to continue driving while Stef leads a bushwalk. So exciting stuff. And again, isn't it wonderful that you guys are a part of every step of our journey? And for me, I almost get excited when things don't work out, because it's nice to just see things differently, and it often leads to, you know, things like this happening with Stef taking you out on a bushwalk. And that wasn't the plan for today, but now it is, and everything happens for a reason. And I love the fact that you guys are in on all of the little shenanigans in between. I'll be back at the DRC in about 5 minutes if we continue at this leisurely speed. Now, Kara, you've mentioned that you would like to see the swap outs. We'll try and show you as much as possible. As soon as the camera, I mean, you'll be able to see us arriving at the Djuma research camp, so that we'll be able to show you. We'll be able to show you the garages where the vehicles are parked. So I'm sure Stef's going to be standing around, Neil's going to be standing around, so we'll give you a little glimpse of that, but then we want to try and make it as quick as possible. So then we'll cut the power and get moving so the safari can continue. Basically now though, unless we see a dinosaur or something spectacular happening, I'm just going to keep heading back to the camp. I don't want to prevent Neil from getting as much time behind the wheel as possible. Siberia Zuni, you would like to know if we've got any geckos that run in and around the camp, and yes we do, and I've got a wonderful photograph of one that I'll be sure to upload onto my Instagram account straight after drive, which will be right now, and that way you'll be able to have a look at it. So there's a few different types of geckos, and I'll let you know a little bit more about the different types and the ones that we see. But they've got incredibly thick tails, they're quite big, chunky geckos. And what's been wonderful is actually noticing that there's a few little hatchlings that are appearing. Nikki in my room seems to be a gecko haven. So it's been fun seeing all the tiny new additions popping out in all corners of the room. Just got to hope that they don't attract any more snakes. Mama Z, the lady who helps keep us in check and with all of our housekeeping, etc. She found a puff adder in the cupboard in my room just as we went to leave, as she was digging through there for some linen. And that's one of the last snakes that you want to be bitten by. Terribly cytotoxic venom that causes your flesh to basically melt off the bone and quite often leads to an amputation of some sort if bitten. So yes, SafariLIVE, there are some geckos around, and I'll make sure that I post a picture for you guys to have a look at. Hope that Jigger, the other vehicle, who I think it's just the clutch cable that's gone, maybe the whole clutch has exploded, that will be a problem. Then you've only got one vehicle. Hello again, Nancy in Texas, and you're interested to know a little bit about habituation. And it's important for everyone to understand that the animals in the Sabi Sands have all been habituated over many, many years. No, hang on, they haven't all been habituated. Many of them have been habituated. But there are certain individuals like the genets and the aardvark and the porcupine that even though they've lived here for many, many years and been born here and raised here, because people haven't specifically focused on them as a species, we haven't got them habituated. Therefore, if you see them at night with the spotlights or whenever you may see them, they're not going to be nearly as relaxed with us as an animal like the leopard, for example. And Nancy's wanting to know which is the most difficult animal to habituate. Well, in terms of general kind of big game that you would view in an area like this, I would say the leopard. And that's why it's important just to distinguish high-profile game, animals that people want to see, as opposed to the other random little animals like genet and aardvark that people that want to see, but there's less pressure to see them. So for your big game, the leopard is by far the hardest to habituate to, and that is what makes the Sabi Sands the wonderful reserve that it is, because we've got such incredible leopard viewing. And that's coupled with the fact that A, they are habituated, therefore they don't run away from the vehicles or hide from the vehicles or completely avoid being seen by the vehicles, which is how most leopards will react unless huge amounts of time has been spent winning them over. And I'm talking many, many years. This has been operating as a wildlife photographic destination for close to 60 years, many, many years ago. Huge time was spent habituating the animals, and I don't know exactly what happened because I wasn't sure, but I wouldn't be hugely surprised if impala were shot and hung up in trees to bait leopard. And by baiting the leopard to that tree, you can park the vehicle over here far away and even get out the vehicle and jump into another vehicle, drive off, and leave the vehicle here, so that just the vehicle alone, even without a human in it, will make that leopard relaxed with the vehicle. Then maybe again, far away from that tree where the impala is dangling, luring the leopard in, you sit in the vehicle and slowly talk. And over many, many years and a long time, that's how leopards were habituated. And it's no different to gorillas that were habituated, chimpanzees that were habituated, that are now no longer fed by humans, but were, for a period of their life, baited by humans, won over that trust, and then slowly the humans extracted. Now, obviously, that's contravening a major rule: do not feed the animals. But it is one method of habituating animals that obviously isn't spoken of that much and isn't required in many areas anymore. And that's good, because it's a very, very fine line between right and wrong. And if not done properly, you can result in that animal's life being at risk. Because if you make that animal realize that you as a human are providing it with a meal, when you don't provide it with a meal, it may become angry with you. And you don't want any of the animals becoming angry with you. So that is why you do not feed the animals, and that is why it's a kind of tricky thing. But leopards are the most difficult animals to habituate. That is why you'll get some reserves in Africa where you do have leopards, you just don't see them. Whereas lion and buffalo and elephant, they're a little bit more welcoming to us as humans. All right. Nearly back. I usually don't employ the Ferrari safari technique, but there's a good reason to today. One thing that I should have just finished off on habituation is that once you've got adults, even one adult female leopard, once you've got her habituated, just one, over time, by spending time with her, she's going to give birth to cubs. And then those cubs are going to read off and feed off her behavior, which is relaxed to the vehicle, and therefore from a very young age, they are going to become even more relaxed with the vehicle. And so the story continues, and their cubs and future offspring, I mean, there's just a massive ripple effect of more and more leopards being used to the vehicles and used to us as humans. So once the code is initially cracked with an adult or a herd of adults, all of their offspring will continue to act in a similar light, provided we as humans continue to behave the same way. So that's why the great thing is once you have cracked that code, like I say, maybe doing some things that may be a little bit controversial, you can win the animals over, and it's important to habituate them. So this is the moment you've all been waiting for. Look at this crew waiting in expectance for you. Addy soldiers. And just can ask him just to the garage. That's where the vehicles sleep at night, and can you believe it? There's an Inyala feeding right there, in and amongst us. Isn't that awesome? You can't see its head, but that's going to be the kind of missing mystery from this morning's drive, and we're going to call it off. You're going to be gone for 5 or 10 minutes while we switch cameras around, and then you're going to be on a bushwalk with Stef and on Drive with Neil. You're going to have a great time, and I'll see you all next time. Toodle-doo.
Good morning, everybody. We've had a little technical issue with the other vehicle, so Scott has kindly driven back and lent me his vehicle, and Stef is out on walk. So my name is Neil. I'm here for the morning, trying out for another presenter position with WildEarth. Looking forward to it. I'm a little bit nervous, but we're going to go out and hopefully just enjoy ourselves and have some fun. It's a really interesting opportunity for myself being here. It's something I've wanted to be doing for a while, and I'm also a very avid watcher of WildEarth, even working in the bush as I do at the moment. This is an incredible opportunity to work with the team and the very, very knowledgeable people that are here. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here, and I hope I can keep the level of guiding and knowledge up there with the rest of the guys. So if you have any questions and want to know anything about me, please send them through. I will try and answer any questions as best as possible. Twitter has a quick question. She's asking how much training I've done before I've come through for this position. Jenny, I started in the bush nearly 15 years ago. So I did a guiding course. I did a 2-year guiding course, which took me up to the level 2 standard of guides in Southern Africa. I then worked as a professional guide for nearly 6 years in Zululand, which is south of where we are currently. After I'd done guiding, I moved on to farm management and reserve and wildlife management, anti-poaching as well. And I spent quite a number of years doing that. It gave me a really nice opportunity to understand how the entire system works, the entire ecology of areas, which was very, very interesting. But I found that I really missed taking people out into the bush and showing them what was out there, exploring what was out there with people. So I got involved with volunteers more than guests, volunteers coming through from all over the globe. Literally, I've had volunteers from everywhere. And that really gave me an opportunity to both work in management and research and to still have people out in the bush with me for extended periods of time. The longest volunteer I ever had was for 5 months. And it's a great opportunity to really get involved with the bush and make a difference to different aspects that are out there. So I spent a long time doing that, particularly in Namibia, working with human and wildlife mitigation. It was very, very interesting in the Caprivi with predators and in the Kinani region with elephants, with the actual desert elephants, which was an amazing experience. And then I've been working in this area where we are currently. I've been working a little bit closer to the Timbavati region, and I've been working up there for 2.5 years, managing and looking after a property for a conservation area up there. So in total I've spent 15 years in the bush and 2 years of study, but in the bush you never stop studying. There is, every single day there is something out here that is new, that is interesting, that you can never come out here and say you know it all. There's, every single day there will be something new, so you never stop studying as a guide. Question has asked if there's such a thing as the ugly five. There is indeed an ugly five. They are deemed to be the non-prettiest animals in the bush. I don't quite believe that personally. I think every animal out here is an amazing, unique animal. We have a number of different fives in Southern Africa. We have the big five, obviously, that everybody knows. The ugly five. We also have the small five as well. So we have a number of different species which are utilized for not quite different marketing strategies, but they're different classifications in the bush for different groups of animals. The ugly five includes members like the warthog and the marabou stork. They're all really beautiful animals. And I don't really like the ugly five. It's for me, it's a bit of a misnomer. Every animal out here is a beautiful animal. From Los Angeles, lovely question, has asked how I know Brett and Scott and the rest of the team. I was very fortunate to go to the same senior school as Brent at the time. Scott came a little bit after me, I'd left school already and was working in the bush by the time that Scott was there. But I've known Brent since school, and it's been a good journey along the way. We've always kept in contact, being spread around Africa at different times, but we've always kept contact with each other. And when Brent joined WildEarth, he told me about it, and I've always been interested in it since Brent told me about it. And Scott, I know more from watching him on WildEarth, learning quite a bit from him. His knowledge is phenomenal, so it's been really interesting for me, even as a guide, to watch the guys out in the bush and present. It offers a very different perspective from different areas. Each area in Southern Africa has different and unique, even areas that are only 20, 30 kilometers apart. You've got different habitats, different species that occur, different birds that dominate areas. And I've had a lot of fun watching the team, in particular Scott. His knowledge is phenomenal. So I've borrowed some of his information. Got a beautiful little group of zebra up ahead, a dazzle of zebra. A couple of nice little youngsters in the group. To know why so many zebra, I'm just going to see if I can find a good position to have a look at them again. Would like to know why so many zebra have a black circle marking on the inside of their leg. I think we're going to get a gap just here. How's that, Ted? So the zebra themselves have very, very unique markings. You can see each individual animal has a slightly different pattern to each other. These zebra, the plain zebra or the Burchell zebra, have a very distinctive shadow stripe. You can see that slightly lighter brown stripe in between the black stripes. Now, each individual will be slightly striped differently, so you can use them for identifying features. Obviously, you will find some that are quite similar. But the little black spot you can see just on the inside of the leg there is actually just on the inside of the knee. And that's often used for different reasons. It actually smells quite strong. It's similar to a scent marking spot, but it's also where their legs rub together, especially when they're sitting. So you get this little mark on the inside of the leg, and that's just from that. It's like a small pad that just keeps the skin from becoming raw and opening a wound on there. So zebra are really, really fun species. In Southern Africa at the moment, we have 3 different species. We have one extinct species, the quagga. That was unfortunately extinct quite a long time ago. There have been a number of projects to try and rebreed quagga from Burchell zebra in particular. And they're a lovely species. Zebra can be very deceiving at the same time. They always look very healthy. They have a very, very impressive gut system, which produces a huge amount of gas and flatulence. So they can be a very difficult species to judge on body condition, because they do always look fat because of that. So not a great indicator for how well they're doing in the bush at different times of the year, especially during winter. You need to look at other species for that. But zebra are beautiful. Going back to the 3 different species that we have, obviously the Burchell zebra, these ones here. And then we have 2 different species down in the Cape, the Hartman's mountain zebra and the Cape mountain zebra. So really, really enjoyable species. The mountain zebra stripes are much, much closer together and a lot harder to tell the individual animals apart. And there's no shadow stripe on either of those zebra species. So the Burchells is a very easy one to identify. We're going to carry on going, see what else we can find. Janice in Baltimore. Lovely question. Janice is asking what my favorite animals are. Hers in particular is the elephant. Janice, I have to admit to being an elephant lover. I have spent a huge amount of time with elephants, especially in Namibia. I got very fortunate to work very closely with the desert elephants, very specifically adapted desert elephants up there. So elephants are one of the top on my list. As far as favorite animals go, or a favorite animal, I don't have a particular favorite. I intensely enjoy the wild dog, leopard species that are really elusive most of the time. It gives a lot of the guides a really fun, enjoyable time tracking and just finding those animals because they are so rare to see. I do particularly enjoy a couple of smaller species. The pangolin in particular is one of my favorite animals. So no particular favorite animal, I just enjoy the bush in general and really enjoy leopard, wild dogs and pangolin. Those are my favorite species in the bush. As far as antelope go, my favorite is the Inyala. He's and she are both beautiful animals. I've spent a lot of time with them, especially in Zululand, which is a great area to see them. So, as far as antelope go, Inyala are my favorite. Through a little bit of a quiet area, so we're going to hop over to Stef and see what he's found out on the bushwalk, and we're going to carry on and see what else we can find.
Well, it's a bit of a belated start to the morning, and I just want to say hello basically from myself, Stef Winterboer, and we have VM on camera on the bushwalk on the sunrise safari. We've decided that we were going to come. Oh, got some flies buzzing around my head. We've decided this morning that we were going to come and walk basically in a southerly direction. There's a game path here that neither myself nor VM have actually walked at all. And so far it's been quite surprising. Unsurprising of where it is. I was actually expecting it to be a little bit closer to the drainage line. There in the distance you'll see that there's quite a deep depression. Now, for those of you who know the property well, this drainage line is where we get our water from. It's where Philemon's dip is located. And I'm seeing that there's a very healthy seepline system here. Basically what that means is all the rain that falls around this area, it'll come out of the ground here where we are. We don't have springs in this part of the world. We've got seeplines, but this is where our groundwater comes out and runs then into these drainage lines. And a very good place to find good quality grass, and with good quality grass you get good quality grazers, and we're hoping to find some lions this morning. Myself and VM have come out wanting to walk into a lion, and that's what we're doing. So we're basically walking through a supermarket here. That's what we're doing, and hoping that we find someone. So we're going to carry on walking here. We're going to weave our way through the trees here. I want to see if I can find something interesting to show you, and we'll take it from there, basically. Chuck, all the way from Illinois, has given us our first question this morning, and Chuck wants to know, he's been watching the show for a bit now, and he is wanting to know why he hasn't seen any butterflies or flowers. Chuck, two quite different answers for that really. Chuck, firstly, flowers are not that common here. We need a lot of rain, and then the flowers that we do have here are usually quite small. We don't have these fields of really big flowers that are lying in blankets. You've got to really stick your nose into some places to get flowers. We start finding a lot of flowers probably about 1,000 yards in altitude higher than where we are now, is where flowers really start to proliferate. So that's for the flowers part. The butterflies part is because we do these walks so early in the morning and so late in the afternoon. There are a lot of butterflies here, but they're really only prevalent around lunchtime. The day heats up, the butterflies open up their wings, they get their metabolic heat from the environment, they start to warm up, and then from there they go and forage for their nectar that they love. So you find a lot of butterflies here between, say, 11 o'clock and about 3 o'clock, and then from there they start to wane off again, and that's obviously when we're going out on safari. So there are some around. We'll see if we can find some, usually hanging around the flowers that we're looking for as well, and we'll try and show you some. We're quickly going to weave our way through here. VM has a fairly large aerial on his back. Very mobile, actually, to be quite honest with you. But nevertheless, he is still subject to bending over. Now, where we're walking now, I'm expecting to find not a lot of insects. The ground here is actually almost sodden with water when these sea plants are active. This is the first year in 17 of the years I've been in the bush here where the sea plants at this time of the year are not flowing. In a normal year, not even in a high rainfall year, we could have expected where I'm walking at the moment for us to be walking in water. Should be a lot of water flowing over the ground over here. Not too much of a story. I mean, let me give you an example. This here would be a pool of water. It's now dry. This should be a pool of water. It is now dry. And this is a wallow. This is how pans are formed. So what happened was an elephant came here. He dug out a little bit of a root. An animal then came, an animal like a warthog or a buffalo or rhinoceros came through here and lay inside this and started to pack it out. It would fill then with water, and because water is flowing from under the ground here, it would have stayed full, which of course would have been an attraction to animals on a hot summer's day. And from there, they would then have started to plaster it off. As their clay and mud on their bodies washes off, they almost start to plaster the sides of these pans, and then the pan gets a bit bigger and a bit bigger and a bit bigger, and that's how you get natural pans forming inside here. So this is sort of like the genesis point for a pan. Not this year, but definitely at some point. Now, I want to have a look at this. We started to find these snails just the other day on walk. Now, if you have a look, this is an empty snail shell. And have a look at the detail in that shell. That's where the snail lived. I'm going to turn it over slowly so that you can see the intricate patterns over there. Have a look at that. And believe it or not, there's actually a mathematical equation that determines why and how many of those rings a snail shell has, and will also determine how many petals a flower has, and a number of other things. It's called harmony mathematics. Quite interesting, yeah. I was expecting this actually to be a different kind of snail shell. This is not the one that I was wanting, or not the one that I was hoping to see, and I'm going to try and see if we can find them for you. It's the first time I've seen the particular snail we're on search for while we're looking for these lines, and I'm looking to see if I can repeat the performance. It's an unknown snail to me, and I'm trying to see if we can repeat the habitat where we found them on the walk the other day with Jamie. They were on stumps. And while I look for one of these snails with you, and we've also just heard some impala cavorting across the drainage line here, we're going to link you back through to Neil so that you can get a nice idea of what he's up to at the moment, and we will carry on our search down here, catching up with you in a while.
Welcome back, everybody. I believe Stef's been showing you some shells of snails that we have out here. I haven't managed to find any beasties yet for everybody to have a look at. driving around slowly looking for any fresh tracks that might be out here. Florida's got a great question. She's asked if I've had any great encounters in the bush while I've had the opportunity to be working out here. And yes, Debbie, I've had a number of absolutely phenomenal experiences which I will never ever forget. Things happen in the bush very quickly sometimes, and sometimes they're slightly more planned when we've got an idea of where an animal's moving to. And one in particular that sticks out for me and always will stay in my mind is in Namibia. I was tracking a herd of desert elephants with a bull that was a big male that was with the group and with the herd. And he's the biggest male in that southern area that I was in. His name was Voortrekker, which is an Afrikaans word for the one who leads in front. The one who makes the way, basically. And I had the opportunity to foresee where they were going to move to at night. They had a very specific area that they were going to go to. Obviously water is very scarce out there, so I knew where they were going to go. So I jumped ahead of them en route, and I had the opportunity to camp in an area out in the desert, and we set up camp. We knew they were going to come to us, so we set up camp. Everybody fell asleep, still no sign of the elephants, and at about 1 o'clock in the morning, Voortrekker woke me up, and he was only standing less than 5 meters away from the end of my sleeping bag. I wasn't sleeping in a tent that night. We used to sleep right out under the stars in the desert. And Voortrekker was standing 5 meters away from me. I was flat prone on the ground, and he was staring down at me, really giving me an inquisitive look, and he couldn't quite figure out what I was. I presume I must have looked like a worm or something like that to him lying on the ground. So he stood there looking at me for a good couple of minutes, and very slowly he took another step forward, and he stretched out his trunk, and he actually started smelling my sleeping bag, and took another step forward, and eventually his front feet were on either side of my sleeping bag, between my legs, with his trunk literally right over the top of my face. And that was an amazing experience. He smelt me, he took his time, he realized I wasn't any threat to him, and he stood right above me looking down at me, and then just slowly, elephants have a lovely manner in which when they're standing and they want to get moving again, they turn their head to one side and then they move the opposite way. And that's exactly what he did. He just turned around slowly and made his way off. He was quite happy with me just being on the ground and not being a threat to him. And that's something I've taken away from that experience, is that animals coming into my space I'm quite happy with. But when you start pressurizing an animal, when you push into their space, that's when you really put stress onto animals. And that's something I strive not to do in the bush. I don't like affecting behavior by what I'm doing. And I don't like pushing into their space, because as soon as I push into their space, I am putting a little bit of stress on that animal. They might move off, they might change their behavior. So it's something that I try and strive for, is to not have a huge influence on what happens out here. I try to be the minimal impact that I can. We are guests in their environment, essentially. And that's the biggest experience for me from that particular incident, is to be part of it once you're out here, to be as small and insignificant as possible. There's obviously times when you need to make a difference and times when you need to make a big difference. But the bush in general for me is somewhere where I try and make as small an impact as possible and affect as little as possible. Calgary would like to know if there's a big difference between the species of game between the Sabi Sands and Namibia in particular. She is hoping to visit this year, and it's a great question, Gail. Yes, there is a big difference between the two areas. In fact, it's the two areas that I love in particular. Namibia is an incredibly beautiful yet very harsh landscape. A lot of it is semi-desert or very open areas. So you get different species up there like brown hyena, desert-adapted elephants, and very unique species that we don't get down in the Sabi Sands. Your species like springbuck. So yes, you will see a big difference between the species. There are some common species between the areas. The Sabi Sands, for you, when you visit, you will find that the density of animals in the Sabi Sands is much higher than Namibia. It has what we call a much higher carrying capacity because of the different systems. Sorry, I just spotted an elephant back on our left-hand side here. I'm just going to reverse slowly. But yes, you will find a big difference between the two areas. The carrying capacity in this area is much higher, so it can carry a lot more game. And that's based on the different systems that we have in place. So a nice young, medium-aged bull that we have feeding on the side of that termitaria there. You will quite often see elephants doing this. I've seen it a number of times in this area and in Kruger National Park as well. The reason why these bulls and sometimes the cows and youngsters will feed near termitaria is the actual termites themselves really do a lot of good for the ground. And a lot of the time, your species of grasses and trees around the termitaria are really flourishing. There's a lot of green growth that comes through there. They're very sweet grasses. So you will often see ellies doing this, feeding around termitaria, spending quite a bit of time around them as well. Obviously nice little vantage spots. You can gain a little bit more height. You may have seen that Scott out early this morning, there was a little bit of drizzle around, but you can see this ellie already flapping his ears. It's warming up very quickly, and humidity is probably close on 70 to 80% today. So it is going to warm up very quickly today, and this ellie's already feeling the heat. Those massive ears of his, him flapping like that, an elephant can pass around about 90% of his blood in his body through those ears every 5 to 10 minutes. So it's a very effective way of cooling down his system by doing that. He's really climbing up on top of that now. Obviously wants the really sweet branches from the top of that tree. Wilson, lovely question, has asked how often desert elephants need to drink. From my own personal experience, I've seen the ellies in that area go for a good 3 days without drinking. They have an amazing ability to know where the available water is at different times of the year. One of the biggest influences that's actually happening in Namibia at the moment with the desert elephants is the human aspect of what's going on up there. And a lot of people are pushing into the ecotone between the arid area and the desert itself. A lot of communities have started farms in that area, and obviously along with the farms, they need to produce water for their cattle and goats and cows, their sheep as well. So that's where a lot of the conflict in those areas is coming from, is the elephants are starting to recognize that there is available water on those farms. He's really climbing right on top at the moment. Very unusual to see him right on the top of it. Lovely view of him. That's really unusual. He is standing on the top of that termitaria now. Big going back to the desert elephants, that's the conflict that's arising is that available water that the farmers have made, the elephants can smell from a good long distance away. And those ellies are going into the farming areas now, and they can recognize that there is water on those farms, and that's where the conflict is coming in. Now, when we talk about farms, a lot of people think about a fenced area. In Namibia and those desert areas, there are no fences. So those desert elephants can walk between the farms without any problem at all. So they walk right into the center of those villages where the water is. And that's where the conflict comes in, is the elephants can obviously drink a huge amount of water. And small groups of desert elephants, they typically number between 8 to 15 individuals. There's a small herd in that area that only has 3 individuals in it. But obviously, 10 to 15 individuals all drinking at one time can take up a huge amount of water. And they drink all the water that the farmers have in one go. And obviously the farmers then get upset and they come out and they try and chase the elephants away, and that's where the conflict arises. Unfortunately, there's been a couple of recorded human deaths because of the conflict, and that's the main reason that I was in that area. So mitigating the conflict between the desert elephants themselves and the farmers. And the way we did that was to build a rock boma structure around the water pumps themselves and the pipes, so that the elephants couldn't damage where they could smell water. We also had an agreement with the farmers that once we had done that they would provide water for the elephants. So we would quite often build small water troughs for the elephants to come and drink from. And that way the elephants could get to water, and that the farmers still had all of their structure left behind, and that nothing was left broken and left them without any water. But to go back to the initial question, desert elephants can go a good 3 days that I've watched personally, and possibly even longer when they really pushed. Those elephants can walk through the desert for a good couple of 100 kilometers, knowing where the next water source is going to be. Who's 15 years old, has asked a great question. She's seen a video where a elephant has thrown a buffalo into the air and killed him. And this is something that quite often happens, and a lot of research has been put into that. And what's happening a lot of the time is young elephants are being pushed out of family herds and into different areas. Little boy is on his move now. And what's particularly happening is these young bulls have no big bull to actually teach them how to behave and what to do, where to go, and really discipline them when they become too cheeky. I'm just going to move forward slightly so you've got a better view of him. So these young bulls that are coming into areas where there's no big dominant bull, often what happens is they go into a time period in their lives called must, and they go through it a number of times a year, and it's a hormonal drive for them that really pushes them to find females. But they get very frustrated, sexually frustrated during that time period, and they seek to really find females, but when they don't, they start to become very, very, very frustrated with life. They often push down trees and things like that. And there's a number of records of young bull elephants unfortunately killing both buffalo and rhino because of it. They're looking for something to relieve that sexual frustration on, and it turns into aggression, and unfortunately that is something that does happen. They can also feel threatened by the bigger herbivores, buffalo and in particular rhino as well, and they can just defend their own areas, and that can be a result, unfortunately, of that. Just a little. This young bull's just taking it easy now. He's found a tiny bit of water there, it looks like. Just spraying the sides of his ears. But we're going to send you back to Stef. He's got some giraffe, I believe. So we're going to send you over to him while we spend a bit of time with this young boy and then have a look and see what else we can find.
Seems like we're going from one species of animal having breakfast to another species of animal having breakfast. This time we've got some giraffe in the background, as you can see over there. Myself and Wiem decided to come and have a look at what the impala were making noise for. It just sounded like they were having a big game, and we ended up walking into what at the time was something akin to what I've seen in the Serengeti and the Masai Mara. We were just surrounded by animals. And you wouldn't believe it, but alongside this female giraffe and her baby, which we're going to take you to have a look at the moment, there's also some impala, there's two different herds of zebra, and there's a big herd of wildebeest as well. They just moved off into the bushes here for a bit, but let's take a walk down this termite mound and let's see if we can get a bit closer to that giraffe mother and her calf, and then we'll make a bit of a loop around the bush in front of us and see if we can show you what we were looking at from the termite mound here in a bit. So come with us. What we're going to try and do is we're going to try and use as much cover as we can to keep between us and this giraffe. She knows that we're here. She's been watching myself and Wiem for a bit. And I don't think that she'll move off at a run, but nevertheless, let's use what cover we can. Giraffe are super vigilant. And being a mom, she's also going to be even more vigilant as to what's snooping around in the bushes around her. But because she's heard us talking, and because she's actually been watching us, I can actually see her over there. She doesn't even really care. She's busy feeding. And it's not that these animals are tame. For those of you who are watching the show for the first time, these animals are absolutely not tame. This is as wild as what you can get in South Africa. We're in the 3.5 million odd or 3.9 million odd hectare Greater Kruger National Park. And this animal is as wild as the wild can be. She won't do anything to us. If anything, she'll probably move off. But Elaine was saying she was watching with the bushwalk the other day with Jamie, and noticed that we saw a bunch of tortoises and bugs and beetles and things straight after the rain. And Elaine, all the way from Michigan, good morning Elaine, you're wanting to know, has the bush dried out? Doesn't seem that we're seeing too much of that stuff. Elaine, the bush has dried out a little bit, but not enough for those types of animals to actually go away. Already this morning, myself and Wiem found a tortoise. We found a bunch of bugs covered in flies as per usual, and we have these animals that we're with at the moment. So it has dried out a bit. There's no standing water at the moment, but not enough for those animals to go back into whatever slumber they were in, or whatever stasis they were in. So here we go. I'm not going to face... There's just too much. but they're just going to move off a little bit. They're not too bad. We've actually got 3 giraffe here, 2 females and a baby. With the older female, this blonde female that we have, yeah, she's in absolutely beautiful condition. Now you get giraffe that are born blonde. You often get blonde giraffe and you often get brunette giraffe, and they do get a little bit darker as they get older. You have a look. Why I know it's a female without even having picked up my binoculars is I had a look at the tuft of hair at the top of her horns. Female giraffe have horns that are a little bit underdeveloped compared to males. They're a little bit more petite, and the hair covering goes all the way to the top, almost like a paintbrush. Males have this big bald patch at the top of their horns, and that's how I know she's a she. She's a beautiful lady. And I love these. As striking as what dark giraffe are, I'm definitely drawn to the more brunette giraffe. I know it might be sounding a bit weird for those of you who don't know my sense of humor that well, but I like the lighter colored giraffe. They, for some reason, stick out more in the bush for me and are more striking. And that little baby's going to come out now. They almost double in size in their first year, and it's the first year that is the most dangerous for young giraffe. Probably move into the open there now. We can just shift over just a little bit to the right hand side to get a view of him or her. Lion, hyena and leopard are all predators of giraffe at this particular age, and it's very rare to actually see young giraffe. You see a lot of baby giraffe, but it's quite rare to see a young giraffe at this age. And because they get big so quick, you literally are looking at a baby giraffe one day, and the next time you see that giraffe, it's already standing, 9, 12 feet tall. It looks like a slightly older calf. It's not, that giraffe you're looking at there eating the bushes is not the mother, I don't think, of this youngster. She might be, actually. So difficult. We're standing a little bit further away. I'll retract that statement. I think it probably is the mother of this calf. Busy nibbling on the top end of an acacia. And there goes the baby, coming out into the open. That youngster is probably standing about 8 feet, 9 feet above the ground. To give you an example, if I were to stand with my arms fully outstretched on top of my head, that's about as big as that little baby is. And that little baby is literally just a year old. Can you believe it? All still legs and neck. Mark has made a comment that giraffe are a type of antelope, and you're not far wrong there, Mark. You're absolutely right. They are a type of antelope. Antelope are like deer, and antelope is a common name for a collection of animals that share certain similar characteristics or body shapes. Very similar to your deer. In the US, I'm gathering that you're from the US, Mark. I didn't get where you're from. But yes, they are a type of antelope. They are ruminants. They are cloven-hoofed animals. They share a lot of similarities in their digestive system and their diet with things like kudu, for instance. There's only, as far as I know, let me just think carefully here, there's only one other close relative or cousin to the giraffe, and that is the okapi, which is a giraffe-like animal that was only really described to science in, I think, the 1960s. It was one of the last massive mammals that was described to science very recently. They live in very isolated pockets in Central African rainforests, which are virtually impenetrable, and of course were only explored recently right into the middle of them. So it's the giraffe and the okapi. They share similar, or they share similar traits with one another, these long necks. But yes, they are a type of antelope. Now, let's carry on walking up the hill here. Those giraffe have moved off, so it will be safe for us to walk up without chasing them away. And I can see, I just got VM caught up in a thorn bush. I can actually see the zebra flitting around in front of us there. Paul River, good morning, Paul. You've just read somewhere that 50% of giraffe don't reach their first year, and that's absolutely true. Giraffe in their first year are the easiest prey for lion and leopard and hyena, and a lot of them, especially in this area, fall prey to lion. There was an area that I was working in a couple of years back that didn't have one single giraffe calf make it to 1 year old, and I've been working there for about 5 years. I didn't see a single baby live past a couple of months, as sad as what that is. But yes, they are very, very yummy for lions to eat. And Susan's asked if we can show her some giraffe tracks. With pleasure, Susan. I'll show you some giraffe tracks in a little bit. I think we've got some giraffe tracks. Yeah, here we go. As that giraffe came through. So, Susan, we've got, this is a giraffe track. There's one track here and one track here. So the giraffe came in and was feeding on the tree that we're working on now. I think the easiest track for me to show you would probably be this one here. This is the hoof, one side of the hoof and the other side of the hoof, and you can see how big it is, sticking way out of the back of my hand, probably a span between my thumb and my baby finger at the moment, and just short of wider than my palm. So two big lobed, cloven hoofed tracks. Not the clearest tracks at the moment, I'm sorry, but we'll see if we can find you a clearer one in a little bit. But nevertheless, a giraffe track right here. Now we've got those zebra walking in front of us, the two different herds of zebra. We've got the one herd here, and the other herd, you can just see their tails swishing off on the left-hand side, just standing off in the distance. And myself and VM are just going to reposition ourselves into an area here where we can show you these two herds of zebra, and hopefully the wildebeest and the impala haven't moved off. As far as I know, Neil and Scott are back onto the vehicle and have probably got an update for you. So enjoy.
Welcome back, everybody. We've been having a look around for any tracks. We saw this battalier that's sitting on the top of the dead tree here. Don't know if you're going to be able to pick up much coloration because of that white sky that's behind him. A really, really pretty bird of prey that we have in this area. One of my favorite birds of prey. The reason why I went and had a quick look in the bush, when they're sitting like this, they can often indicate that there's a carcass in an area. There's another bird of prey just off to our right hand side as well. Tebs on the dark tree over here. And that looks like a tawny eagle, if I've got that correct. You can see the coloration a little bit better on him, just in a different direction with less white cloud behind him. But lovely birds of prey. Both of these species are very, very good indicators of a kill in an area, particularly leopard. They're often one of the first birds that pitch up to kills in an area. Now, we've got a couple of impala that are grazing off to our right-hand side, so I don't think there's a kill in an area, but very, very pretty birds of prey, these two that are here, very, very close together. They tolerate each other's presence quite happily. So, for everybody who's keeping track of the birds in the area, if you haven't got these two, hopefully for a couple of you, these might be two new birds for your lists. Really, really nice birds of prey, these two. Two of the bigger species that we have. We're gonna get going again, see what else we can pick up in the bush. So if anybody else has any more questions, fire away. Quite happy answering questions. Diane would like to know if English is my first language. It is my first language, and she's also asked if I can speak any other languages. Diane, being born in South Africa and having grown up here and having worked in Southern Africa, it's essential to learn as many languages as possible. So I do speak Afrikaans and Zulu fluently. I grew up in an area with which was a very, very Zulu area. On the property that my father owned, we had over 80 members of staff, and a lot of those staff were Zulu, and I spent a lot of time as a child out on the farm with a very, very great friend of mine, a Zulu man called Philip Malenga, and he taught me a lot of the Zulu that I know, and it's a really beautiful language, very descriptive, and very, very musical. I find a lot of the African languages are very musical languages. And as I've traveled around Southern Africa in different areas, I've had to learn different languages. Obviously English for a lot of areas is not their primary language. So as you go into a new area and you start working in that area, it's nearly essential that you learn the language that is local in that area. So at the moment, my three languages that I speak fluently, English, Afrikaans and Zulu, and I speak another 4 African languages in a basic form, enough to get by for most days, enough to hold a small conversation. So in total, 7 languages. I've been trying very recently to learn a couple more European languages, a bit of French and German, and I've been struggling with those. They're a little bit more difficult for me than the African languages are. But Zulu really gave me a good base to learn the African languages from, and it's something that I really enjoy. It's a love that's obviously been born from very early childhood, so it is something that I do enjoy doing. Has asked a question about my Facebook profile picture. I have a brown dog seated between my legs, and she's asking if that is my dog and if he is still with me. Gilly, to answer your question, he belongs to the property that I currently work on. He was a rescue dog. He came to us as a poacher's dog. He was found running around on the property that I manage. He pitched up at the main gate of our property, and the anti-poaching team that I control on that property chased him away, and 2 days later he came back and sat at the gate, refused to leave. The anti-poaching team chased him away again, and 2 days later, true as Bob, he was back again. So his name is Bube, B-U-B-E. lovely, lovely dog. I love him to bits. He's an incredibly affectionate dog. He loves his cuddles, and he whines terribly when people are away that he recognizes and gets on well with. So it's unfortunately it's a dog that belongs to the company that I work for currently, and he will stay with that property. He actually has a friend, a little black dog. Should I say little? He's actually bigger than him at the moment, called Honey. And they are two boys. They get on fantastically. They're not from the same litter, but they are awesome little dogs and very, very loving. And they do not chase animals anymore, which is a great thing. And they've both been rescued. It's something that I strongly believe in. Unfortunately, a lot of domestic animals are given up, and it's something that I strongly believe should be done more, is people adopting rescue animals from centres or areas, SPCAs, things like that. Something that I very strongly believe in. I do enjoy dogs immensely. I've done a little bit of dog training myself. I'm not quite Caesar Milan, but I do enjoy training a dog and getting that relationship, that bond between the dog and a person really strong and good. So it's something that I do really enjoy, and obviously enjoy having a dog with me. Out in the bush, they can be an immense help. They're used by a number of anti-poaching teams at the moment, a very specific breed called the Belgian Malinois. Very, very effective tracking dogs, and used in the bush very effectively, and obviously a number of other dog breeds in the world that are bred specifically for being out in the field, termed as working dogs. And those dogs are great to have in a situation being out in the bush, especially if you're working on your own, where you might be walking through difficult areas. Those dogs can often pick up signs of a predator a lot quicker than a person can. So they're a great early warning system to have in the bush as well. It's great protection and generally great companionship. So really enjoyable. I do really enjoy my dogs. Looking for anything this morning to bring you that might brighten your day even more, we're going to link back to Stef, and I think he's got some interesting insects for you to have a look at. So we'll see you a little bit later on.
I must be honest with you, it definitely is, and I share my love of dogs in the bush with Neil. It definitely is one of the most pleasurable experiences that I've had in my career, of being able to walk through the bush in the wild with a dog that is just yours, that you've had a hand in raising from a puppy. It just, for some reason, I suppose it's like horse riding in the bush. It's just one of those things that we were made to do. But on another note, myself and VM have tracked an drop-tail ant migration, and we found a colony of drop-tail ants which are busy moving from one nest to another. Now, these are predatory ants. They are not farmers. These are carnivorous ants. And they are not raiding a termite colony. Those white pupae that they're busy carrying in their mouths are not food, but they're babies. So what they're doing is they're moving from one nest to another, and you probably find that it's because these ants have basically denuded the bush around here of food, and they need to move from one area to another to get more food. And that's what ant colonies do, is they move, they're migratory, they move from one place to another. And you can see that this ant nest is an old ant nest. I don't know how long they stay in any particular area. I don't have that information with me, but I'm looking at, look at that, following the path. They're using a scent trail, so every ant in this colony is related. They are all females. The only males that we will be seeing at the moment in this colony will be in those egg cases. Some of them will be males, But all the ants in a colony are all females. They're all related. They all come from a single queen. And these ants will be moving from one place to another. And I think let's go and see if we can track where they're going to and see how far from one area to another they move, because they obviously need to move into an area that is adjacent to this so that they're not exposed and their babies are not exposed, but an area that has a little bit more food than this area that they're around now. So I think let's go around. They'll be using a scent trail, and so you won't find ants wandering all over the place. They actually will be walking on a line with one another. And I can see they're going here. Pick up the stick and I can show you with the end of the stick. There they are going there. Here. Here they're going here. Still walking in a line, still carrying all their babies. And here they're going into this bush. They're going through the bush. And I don't see them coming out on the other side. Let's just make 100% sure. No, their new colony is inside. There we go, got their new nest. Incredible, so not very far at all. Inside there, that's their new nest. You can see them inside there. They'll be excavating their new burrows. You can see that there's a lot of fresh sand that's lying on the outside there. And you've got some workers that are walking from the entrance out, dropping a load of sand and then walking back again. You can see all those babies going inside there now. They'll be going into the nesting chambers. They get tended by nurses, basically. So you have in ants, similar to having in bees, you have castes, or termites at least, you have castes. They are born into their position. And that is almost one organism. What they'll do is eventually, once the nest is moved, they'll move the queen out. She's too big. She's going to be an enormous egg-laying queen, probably about this big. And they'll carry her into here, and then they'll put her in the chamber, and then from there, they'll carry on foraging. And they eat almost anything. They'll dismember spiders. They have a dramatic effect on the insect flora around an area like this. Foraging out, ooh, let me see. Distance-wise, I'm just trying to remember my facts and figures in my head now. I can't remember the facts and figures, but these ants will be going out in raiding parties. They will then attack almost anything that they come across. They carry it in collectively. They will carry it and drag it and push it back to the nest. They will then dismember it, and the rest of the colony will share in the bounty. All right, let's carry on. That was quite nice, actually. And while we carry on looking for some things to show you, we're going to be linking back to Neil, and myself and VM will absolutely catch up with you in just a little bit.
Welcome back, everybody. We're still chopping around the bush at the moment, seeing what else we can find on the wild side. Just looking for any fresh tracks of any movement through from elephant or any of the leopard in the area. Being new to an area like this, I'm not yet 100% with all the names of individual animals that people might know. So you'll have to forgive me if we do find something that everybody knows who it is. I might struggle to figure it out, but I'm sure everybody at home can help me if I'm not sure. I might also get lost, considering this is the first time I'm driving on the property myself. So I may need some help from the viewers at some point during the trip today. Sally's got a great question for me. She's asked what I'm most excited about for my first drive out with the WildEarth team. So Sally, for me, the entire experience has been amazing. I've had the opportunity to meet the majority of the team, the ladies behind the scenes, the guys that run absolutely amazing experience to be out here with the guys. They have a phenomenal knowledge about the bush, and it's something that I'm probably most looking forward to, is being able to chat, talk, explain, explore with everybody out here. The guys behind the camera, they know a lot of things that I have absolutely no idea about. So that's something that I'm really hoping, if WildEarth believes that I've got the capability, that's something I'm really hoping to enjoy and explore with everybody. So it's a great situation. On the drive itself, I think the most interesting, the most thing I've been looking forward to is actually just exploring the area. It's very different to where I currently work. So the actual habitat itself, how much game is in the area. You've probably already been told, I'm sure, about the lack of rain this year. So it's very interesting to see the difference between an area that has the complete ecology unit working as opposed to the property where I'm on, which is much smaller than this and is self-contained. So we don't have elephants, we don't have rhino, buffalo, so we miss a lot of your belt grazers, and it's very interesting to see the difference in ecology between the two areas, even if they're only 80 kilometers apart. It's very interesting. So that's been the biggest really interesting thing for me, to see how different the ecology is functioning at the moment. A very complete system as opposed to a very structured, controlled system. We've got a lovely little tortoise just in front of us on the road. Now he's a tiny little guy. He is one of the hinged tortoises, and he's going to get a little shift on now. I've obviously backed off enough for him to feel safe, so he's moving off. But just in front of his back legs is a tiny, tiny little hinge that this particular species can actually close down on itself and protect his rear end. It's obviously quite a vulnerable spot. The shell obviously protects a lot of the animal, but that hinge can actually close down and protect that back end that he has. And that protects him from a lot of predators, especially from the birds of prey. They like to try and get in on the legs and actually pull them out like that. So that little hinge is a really effective way of actually protecting himself. You'll find quite a lot of the tortoises are quite active at the moment, especially with the rain about. The rain obviously creating small puddles out in the bush, and the tortoises will use those small puddles to drink from. Season at the moment, or egg laying season for the tortoises, so a lot of them will be looking, a lot of the females will be looking for suitable areas to lay their eggs in as well. After the rains, that's essential. Obviously the ground is nice and soft and they can dig to the depth that they need to be digging. We're going to carry on, see what else we can find for everybody. Interesting question from Richard, who's asked if I enjoy being out in the bush primarily on vehicle or on foot on a bushwalk. Lovely question. I love both. I have a particular interest in being on foot. It's closer to the ground, you feel slightly more connected to the system out there, and slightly less impact on the environment. Obviously with a vehicle you've got quite a lot of weight and you're making quite a bit of an impact when you're not on the roads. So being on foot for me tends to be my primary preferred way of movement out in the bush. You can also get into areas that a vehicle can't, so you can go and investigate things and have a look for species that you might have heard. If there's a leopard calling down somewhere and you can't get in there with a vehicle, obviously being able to get in there on foot is a great way to do it. You do need to have a little bit more experience in the bush, especially being out on foot. Your animal knowledge, animal behavioral knowledge needs to be quite sharp. So it's something that really needs to be done correctly. So, yes, to answer your question, Richard, on foot is my preferred method of transport in the bush. Something that I particularly enjoy. I believe we Stef as a chameleon for everybody to have a closer look at.
And look what we managed to find for you. I actually just got a bit of a fright. I thought it was the tail end of a puff adder, and it ended up being the tail end of a chameleon. Have a look at how amazingly colourful this chameleon is. He was on the floor, and obviously he's picking up the colours of the floor, the dark browns and almost blacks of the floor, with the lighter greens of the new growth coming up after the rain. And it's just absolutely amazing to watch him hunting on these sticks. He's oblivious to us, as you can see from his eye movement. He's busy hunting at the moment, and you can just see that very slow movement, very calm and calculated, not wanting to disturb anything around him, using his camouflage and his stealth and his long body to hide what he is. You can see he's made himself all skinny in actual fact. Not keeping his tail upright. Typically when you see chameleons on the road or on the ground, they got their tails sticking up straight up, at sort of perpendicular to the ground. Now, one of the most amazing things about the chameleons is the fact that they can move their eyes independently, keeping a massive field of view, and their brain can actually see two pictures at the same time and can coordinate that. To me, that's just incredible. And obviously when they've spotted something, they'll make an approach, and then their eyes will be locked forward, giving them full binocular vision, which allows them to judge depth and distance. And then he'll shoot out a tongue, probably about as long as what his body is. But I see that Wiem's tight on his head at the moment. You can see those ridges. It's actually male. Well, they'll use it for a couple of things. One is to break the outline of the chameleon, so it's a bit of camouflage and concealment. Two, it's so that they look pretty for the ladies. And three, it's so that when males are fighting with one another, they bump each other with their heads. It doesn't just slide off. There's actually some friction created with those little ridges, and he'll use his head to bump an opponent out of play, so off of a branch or off of a twig. Liam's just gonna get himself untangled. This wait a bit bush is forcing him to wait a bit. You can see him subtly changing color as he lifts himself off of the floor. His front half of his body is going a lot lighter, and the back half of his body is still picking up the browns and greys and greens. It's amazing. Those things are called chromatophores, and he will expand them open to turn black and contract them to go to a whiter color. Have a look at what he's doing with his back feet. He's balancing on his tail. That's incredible. Keeping his head absolutely still, eyes moving all the time, just looking for food. I was actually remarking to Wiem while we were waiting for you to come to us that these poor guys must be getting hungry this year. There's been a distinct lack of insect populations this year. The only thing that seems to be increasing in number and thriving are the ever-present flies. But there doesn't seem to be much other insects. This year has been an absolute phenomenon for me, is that we should be walking through fields of spiders and every other insect, and just hasn't happened. I always wondered to myself, what's happened to those eggs? Have they gone Have they gone dormant? Are they waiting for another year? Have they died? Do they need to be repopulated? Is this Mother Nature's way of just calming things down again and then starting afresh? I suppose we'll just have to wait and see. It's going to be very interesting the next couple of years to see what actually happens, with the repopulation of the bushes, basically primary animals, the insects, the grasses, the flowers. Termites and ants seems to be doing okay. Just VM getting into a nice position over there. It's quite uncomfortable. He was on his knees, so excuse the shake that came through. Now you can see that whiter color that he's gone on his forehead. That was just coming from the branches. He should go darker as he steps onto that. There you can actually see it happening in front of your eyes, him going darker. Look at those stripes behind his eyes just getting blacker by the second. Those eyes of his never ever stopping. I've got a comment from Insomniac, who I seem to share some similarities to, has asked, would he bite if we had to pick him up, or will he be calm and docile? To be honest with you, it just depends on his mood. I've been bitten by chameleon before, but it's always generally when it's been a very warm evening or warm day, when they're quite active, and I've gone in and I've made an aggressive move towards that chameleon and I've tried to pick him up too aggressively. They've bitten me. It's not very sore. It's sort of like a mild pinch. But most of the time when you try and touch these guys, they're quite docile. They don't do anything. They calm down quite easily, and I suppose in that sense, yeah, they're quite calm. We're quite big, but if you don't make an aggressive move towards them, they won't react aggressively towards you. Have a look at him now going underneath that branch. Exactly the same color as that stick. You can see him making that very slow move, and then it's interspersed with a slight wavy motion, I should say, and that's so that he can emulate branches blowing in the breeze, and he can sort of emulate the bush around him. There's not much of a breeze now, it's gusting in actual fact, and right now it's very still around us. He goes there. He's now moving off of the branch onto the other side. I think what we're going to do is try and get you onto this side of him. I know if it's going to take VM having to stand up and it'll be a bit shaky, but I think it's worth seeing him go onto the floor. You see the green that he's going to turn into when he actually moves into the plant that he's aiming for. So he's going to change color again. And Anna Marie has asked approximately how long is this chameleon? How big is this chameleon? Anna Marie, he's probably about as long as your two hands put one on top of one another. So if you put your fingers to your palms, he's as long as that. You can see he went a little bit greener as he approached that bush. Now going back to the stick again. They've got a long sticky tongue. They've got quite sticky saliva, almost like when you've been running too long without having enough water and your saliva goes all tacky in your mouth. That's how I have felt the saliva of a chameleon. And their tongue is not attached to their back of their mouth like it is with us. We've got our tongue attached to almost in our throats. Their tongue is attached right to the front of their mouth, giving it the most reach it can do. And it's got this big bulb at the end. It's a fold. And basically what the chameleon will do is shoot the tongue out. They can flick it the most unbelievable distance, the exact length of its body in actual fact. Sticks out, sticks onto whatever insect, and then they retract their tongue and they pull it into their mouth. And from there, they chew it up and enjoy their meal. Now they are reptiles, so they do get their energy from the environment around them. They are cold-blooded. So he on a cold day will be less mobile than he is on a warm day, and they can be too cold and they can also get too hot. Watch your head there, Liam, you've got some thorns above you. And they can actually get too hot, so they can be too cold and too hot. And if he's got a full belly of food, he needs to get into a position where he can regulate his body temperature to make sure that he metabolizes food quick enough. And Lois in Buffalo have asked about the pads on the chameleon's feet. Lois, they don't have pads on their feet like a gecko would. They've got nails. Maybe VM can use that massively fantastic zoom that he's got on his camera and show you the nails on their feet. And then at the bottom of the feet they have a few ridges, and this allows the friction that they can get from, or friction that they need on the branches. So between their claws, and you can have a look, their claws are grouped, 2 on one side, 2 claws on one side, or 2 toes on one side and 2 toes on the other, and it is a clasping motion. You can see how he clasps. So between the claws, the clasping ability of their feet, and then those tiny ridges and pads on the bottom of their feet, chameleons can pretty much go anywhere. They got a surprisingly hard grip that's generated from those skinny little legs and arms that they've got. They do sleep at night. They are diurnal, so they sleep at nighttime. Diurnal means they're active in the day. And you find them sleeping usually probably about head height in a bush with their eyes tightly closed. And I must say that in my experience, there's nothing quite similar to a grumpy person than waking up a chameleon. They look grumpy. Their eyes look swollen. They battle to open them up. Just have a look. We just want to remind you that we're on a bushwalk here in the middle of the Kruger National Park. You're alive on safari with us. We're watching this chameleon just a couple of seconds before you watching it coming out of the screen wherever you are in the world. Did you find that absolutely amazing? So I think that is awesome. And for those of you who are watching for the first time and have been noticing that I've been answering questions, we are an interactive show. You can ask me questions via the Twitter handle #SafariLIVE, if I get it right, or you can send us an email to questions@wildearth.tv, and we'll try and answer those that are relevant and that we can get through. Of course, we get a lot of them, but we'll try as much as we can to answer that one. But we're going to leave this chameleon now. Myself and VM are going to carry on with the bushwalk this morning, and we are going to be linking back to Neil so that he can give you an update on that side. Thank you for joining us with this chameleon. Hopefully we can show you something just as exciting in a little bit.
Welcome back, everybody. I believe you've had some awesome footage of a chameleon moving through the bush. Something that's always fascinating to watch. I've picked up on some tracks here of what looks like hyena moving along the road. So just popping down here to see if they might still be around. It's obviously getting a little bit later in the morning, so they might be moving back to den sites or areas that they're going to rest up for the day. Just having a look and see if I can catch up with them. Asked a lovely question. She's asked if there's an animal species in South Africa that I haven't seen and that I would love to see. And yes, indeed, there is a couple of species which I would desperately love to see in the bush. The biggest one for me is a tiny little cat species called a black-footed cat. We often refer to them as termite tigers. They often make homes in the termite mounds, and a black-footed cat is a species that I've never had the opportunity to see, to watch and really enjoy and spend a bit of time with. So that is one particular species. There's, in the bush here currently, and in a lot of places, there's a species that I've only seen on a couple of occasions. It's a nocturnal species called an aardvark, which is a animal that specifically feeds on the termites. And I've seen them on a couple of occasions, but never really had a great sighting of one. I've seen a couple running across roads, disappearing into the bush, and all I've got is this round bum disappearing into the grass. And that's something that I would love to spend some more time with. Other than that, there are a number of bird species that I still have to get on my list. I know a lot of viewers have their lists going for what they see on safari with us. My personal life list, my bird list, stands at just over 560 species at the moment in southern Africa, and that is something that I obviously try and increase whenever I have the opportunity to go to a new area. You get these lovely species of birds which are very endemic to areas. Some live in very specific, tiny little areas. Species like the green barbet that you only find in the Ngoya forest down in Zululand. And you're talking about an area that's 30, 40 hectares. It's a small area for one specific bird to occur in. So there's a number of bird species that I would still love to see and spend time with and add to my list. Has a lovely question. She's asked if I have a favorite season in the bush, and I do. I very much do. I particularly enjoy the spring. Spring for me is a time of the year when everything comes back to life. Trees, grasses, all of your migrant bird species start arriving back, and that's something that I really enjoy. Being able to see the bush go from a very sorry state to something that is just bounding with life, with energy. And you can see it in the animals and the birds that come back at that time of the year. The baby animals that get born, running around the bush. So in particular, yes, spring is my favorite. Sally on Twitter has asked if I've had a... Sorry guys, I believe we've got black screen. Apologies for the black screen, but I'm going to carry on talking. The question was for a time on safari where things haven't gone as planned. And yes, I've had a couple of times on safari when things haven't gone as planned, and things have become difficult. And a good example of that was possibly when I was again in Namibia, and a lovely guy called Stef helping me at the time, and Steve unfortunately came off a vehicle when we were traveling through an area, and in the deep sand got unfortunately pulled underneath the vehicle, and the back wheels of the vehicle unfortunately went over his pelvis area, and that particular incident, he ended up having 5 different cracked bones through the pelvis. So yes, things go unfortunately not as planned sometimes, and that can sometimes put things in a bit of a spin. But it's something that all guides and all people working in the bush really do have to deal with, and really learn how to handle quickly, efficiently, and with a very calm head. So there are a number of incidents like that. Obviously it is the bush. A lot of the time things can change very, very quickly in a manner of a heartbeat. The situation can change, and that's something that really has to fall on the guide, the leader, to be able to handle and correct or deal with, make the arrangements that need to be made, and then get everybody back on track and carry on with the safari if need be, or in worst case scenario to be called off and handled in a different way. So there's a couple of incidents like that have happened to me. I did have a guest who had a heart attack on a vehicle, and we managed to, lucky enough, get him back and get him back to hospital, and he recovered from that. So you do have to just deal with different situations as they arise. But often on safari something will come up that's unexpected, and you learn to deal with it in the way that you're most comfortable with. But the essential thing is to keep a calm, level, cool head and deal with it in a way that's effective. Lovely question from Aqua, who's asked if I have experienced any wilderness areas outside of Africa. And to be very, very honest with you, Aqua, I have not. I've done, other than Southern Africa itself, I've done very little travel. I love the bush, and it's been very, very difficult for me to leave the bush, even when I go on holiday. I tend to spend time in areas that I'm wanting to go to in Africa itself, and in particular Southern Africa. I've spent a bit of time on the islands surrounding South Africa, Mauritius and the Comores, Madagascar, but never really done any traveling outside of Africa. I've been to the UK a couple of times. My brother lives in Scotland, so I've been there a couple of times. But true wilderness areas, there's a number that I would love to go to. I have a list that is incredibly long of areas that I would dearly love to go to and spend time in. A lot of them include areas like the Atacama Desert, and areas that you don't find a lot of people. True wilderness areas are something of a rarity these days, but it is really something I would love to do. But no, I have not spent a lot of time out in any other wilderness areas outside of Africa. So I'm going to check stuff in front. Safari's asked a quick question of how I spell my name. Safari, my name is Neil Bone, N-E-I-L, and bone as in a bone in your leg, or give a dog a B-O-N-E. She's asked if I am on any social media. I currently am only on Facebook. I am not a very technological person. It is something that's been a challenge for me to get involved with. Facebook is the first social media system that I've actually joined. It's an amazing way to keep in contact with people, share experiences and highlights. But it's really been something that I've slowly started to learn and get into. Sorry, just having a look at some tracks here. Hyena. Yeah, hyena again. So yeah, for social media, only Facebook at the moment. I believe we're going to pop over to Stef again and see what he's found for everybody in the bush. So we'll see you a little bit later, guys.
And look at the surprise that VM and I bumped into inside the drainage line here, close to Philemon's Dip. What you're looking at, that greyish matte colour, are in fact the adult form of the antlions that we show you from time to time. Everything around here, every single one of those is a little antlion. This is the adult form of an antlion. They call them lacewings. And I know it's an antlion because of the clubbed antennae. So if you have a look at one of them, I'm not sure which one, there are just thousands. You'll notice that the antennae have a slight bulb or thickening. And these guys are here because obviously it's dark and it's dank and it's covered. They're not feeding on anything, they're not feeding on this grass, they just collectively probably emerged at around about the same time, and they are waiting here for the evening. They're nocturnal and they will then fly from here to do their business. I'm actually not sure if they even eat as adults. I think they literally just get together like this, they have a mass mating of one another, and then they go and lay their eggs. But have a look at that, isn't that amazing? Literally just flitting through here. Let's see if I can give you an idea of how many there actually are. I'm not going to disturb them. I just want to get a bit closer so that you can see them starting to fly. There we go. Isn't that amazing? Now, one of the most intriguing things for me, this animal metamorphosis, how you can go from a predatory animal that digs a pit, and a pitfall trap, has these big clasping jaws on its face and this burrowing abdomen and this nature of walking backwards into the sand and flicking sand at prey. That in itself is amazing. And then what it does is it goes through this enormous change. And from going basically from being subterranean to airborne like this flitting, flighty, soft, non-aggressive, absolutely non-dangerous animal whatsoever. It's just one of those magic things where you don't really understand why or how they get it right. It's just to sit back and just wonder the amazement of it. But of course, the ever-present nature of these things is, have a look at this. We always find a bit of beauty in the beast. I'm going to just put my finger right here. Have a look at the size of that spider. See if you got it there, yeah? So this garden orb spider just so happens to have a web close to where these damselflies or lacewings are roosting for the day. She's busy eating something that she's caught. She's got a beetle that she's busy eating there. There she's just flicked off the empty carapace, so she's finished her breakfast and flicked away the empty carcass. And I have no doubt that she will catch some of these when they get going for the evening. Oh, I've just been entangled in one of her webs over there. That's a pretty big spider for this particular area. They don't get much bigger than that. You can see how big she is. There's my hand. It's about as big as my palm. that zigzag web that's characteristic of the garden orb spiders. It's called a stabilimentum. She looks like she's caught something. And Siberia has asked, how long is the cycle of the antlion? Siberia, that's a good question. I don't actually know off the top of my head. Do you know that? I think it's a season. It's a summer season. You find antlions will start becoming a bit more prolific as summer starts. It takes them quite a while to build up the fat reserves needed to go through a metamorphosis. It's obviously an energy intensive exercise, and then they incubate, they come out of the ground in actual fact, so they metamorphosize in the ground, and then they emerge as the damselflies. And what that actual time frame is, from egg to antlion, how long they stay antlion, how long they'll be, how long the metamorphosis actually takes, and then moving on to how long they actually stay in these adult forms, I'm not actually sure. It'd be interesting if there is some documented information on it. I'm sure that there is. You're welcome to have a look for it if you don't mind giving me and everyone else that's watching this morning a hand. I'll gladly share it with you when we get it back through FC if we get a good answer before the show finishes. Remember, you can send it to the hashtag SafariLIVE on Twitter, or you can email questions@wildearth.tv and I'll share that information. But just thinking about it, it's definitely not going to happen many times in a season. It's probably just going to happen once a season. I doubt that it'll take more than a season to get the energy needed. And I say that because insect prey is actually a lot more nutritious than, say, wood is, for instance, or plant material. So they won't need as long as what cicadas or anything like that need. So I think a season, I think it's a pretty good guess. If I were to guess, I'd probably say anywhere in the region of about 4 to 5 months. Oh, good morning, Genevieve. You've all the way from New York have asked me, have I seen a parasitic wasp around? Genevieve, there are so many types of parasitic wasp. I have seen the spider hunting wasp at the moment. I haven't seen any other wasps this morning, but I haven't really been looking at or looking for wasps this morning. So we've got Neil passing us. We're like right in Philemon's dip. So speaking of Neil, that's just passed us, hiding in the drainage line over here, looking at these damselflies. We're going to be linking through to him, and yeah, we'll see you in a bit.
Another right. There he goes. Welcome back. Just thought I saw an interesting little bird there, but unfortunately he's flown off. I was going to take this out, but I think we'll head up right and see if there's anything up that way. Unfortunately, those tracks from the hyena a little bit earlier on have moved off a different direction. Just popping up along this one. Still not 100% sure that I'm in the right area, or where I am in particular on the property, but enjoying it nonetheless. Angela in New Zealand would like to know what signs I've been looking for, like the hyena that I've been tracking earlier. Angela, there's a number of signs and indicators in the bush, what we call the signs of the wild, that I've been looking for. The biggest one and the most reliable one is obviously tracks on the ground that we use to follow specific animals as they're moving along. A lot of them will use roads. The roads are like big game paths. I I know Brent's spoken quite a few times about big elephant paths, and that's the main one that I've been using at the moment. But there's a number of ways of using different signs of the wild, markings, territorial middens, things like that. Can tell you that whether an animal lives in that specific area, rubbing posts, dung middens, all sorts of things like that, which we call signs of the wild. But while we're moving like this, obviously being on the roads, this is the easiest place for us to find any signs or tracks that we can utilize to try and find the animal that might have been moving through that area. Tracks that we do find, obviously we can, with a bit of experience, with a bit of knowledge, you can start learning how to use those tracks, how fresh they are, how long they've been on the ground. It's something that has to be learnt over time. Tracking is a true art form. It's something that's really interesting to do, especially if you have a great teacher, somebody who enjoys tracking. I've been very fortunate through my career to have two trackers who particularly taught me a lot about what we call the spoor, the tracks of animals, how old they are, how to tell how long they've been there, watching weather conditions. A lot of things can affect the track of an animal, and that will determine obviously whether that track is feasible for you to follow up on or whether it's not feasible for you to follow up on. So it's really something that has to be done over time. It's not something that's a 5-minute experience. It's something that does take years to do well, and essentially a lifetime to perfect. It's not something that comes very quickly. But I've been very fortunate to have two trackers who are exceptional trackers and have taught me a lot. My first tracker in Zululand actually refused to teach me. He said no to me a number of times, and what he was doing was just testing me. He was trying to find out if I was really interested, and I kept on badgering him, and that's what he wanted me to do. He wanted to find out if I was genuinely interested in tracking or whether I was just asking for the sake of asking. So he was a great teacher. He spent a lot of time with me looking at everything from tracks of carnivores and different species all the way down the scale to insects. Got a nice elephant coming up on our left-hand side again. But tracking is something I genuinely enjoy. He's asked a great question. She'd like to know why elephants are one of my favorite species in the bush. Now, I particularly enjoy elephants for a number of reasons. Number one, I suppose, and the most pertinent for me, is the sheer power and size that elephants have. They have a fantastic way of feeding and living through life, and that huge bulk obviously requires a huge amount of food, and that to me is something that's essential. These guys shape a lot of landscapes in Africa in general, and they really are a fun species to watch feeding. You can see how he's been using his toe there to kick up some of the things that he's been feeding on, branches off the tree. That prehensile tip on the trunk, and that trunk is incredibly strong, and it effectively gives them an advantage over a lot of other species, being able to reach food sources that other species can't. But the way in which they feed, especially during the dry season, by pushing over bigger trees, they make a lot of food sources available to your smaller species. And that's something that obviously I enjoy, is the way they feed provides for a lot of other animals. It's an indirect food source, but that provides for a lot of animals that would otherwise struggle to get to a food source. So that is particularly one thing that I enjoy. Their social structure, their compassion for each other. I don't like to humanize a lot of behaviors, but elephants certainly have some kind of compassion built-in system that they have, and it's an amazing thing to watch, particularly when they come across the bones of other elephants that have passed away. There's this very deep reverence for who that animal was, and they spend a huge amount of time often standing in complete silence with bones of other elephants, sniffing them, picking them up, and often just holding them in their trunks. And that's something that I particularly respect and enjoy about elephants. They all are also a species that has to be respected. An elephant can do huge amounts of damage in very quick time, so they've got to... Otter's Pocket has asked a good question. When do elephants come into must, this heightened sexual period for the bulls? Now, must is something that comes with age. Obviously, as a young bull, when he's still with his family herd, he won't come into must, typically very much. When he starts reaching maturity, he starts properly going into must. And as a young bull, they tend to get it pretty much every 3 to 4 months. And as the bull gets older, those periods will extend slightly out. So older bulls, when they start pushing 40, 50 years old, then they'll start pushing on must typically only 2 or 3 times a year. So it's a fairly common occurrence for younger males, and it slightly extends out as they get older. A very good way of telling if an animal's in must is if you can see a slight wet patch on the side of the face. So he's just moved behind a bush there. So guys, I believe our time in the bush is up, and my first drive with all the viewers out in the rest of the world, and I hope everybody has enjoyed being out here as much as I have, being able to tell you a bit about myself. I feel like I've spoken about myself the whole drive, but it's been really enjoyable to be out here and show you guys a little bit of what's out here and my knowledge base that I have, and I sincerely hope everybody's enjoyed it. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be out with everybody here. It's something that is obviously very, very, very enjoyable, and it's something that I love to do. So I'd like to thank the whole team and say thank you very much, and thank you to Tebs. Appreciate the camera work, and I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to pass you guys off to Stef. Okay, cheers.
Oh, what an eventful morning. It started off with the hope of going into 2 drives, and it ended up being a drive and a walk after a little bit of a switcheroo in the car park. You got to see a few things. What an amazing chameleon sighting. I must say, that's the highlight for me for today. And then the collection of damselflies down there. But while I'm reminiscing, I just want to say goodbye. Thank you very much for joining us for this sunrise bushwalk this morning. Myself and VM say cheers. See you soon.